Hi, my name is Laura Castillo, Assistant Director for Student Accessibility Services, also known as SAS. I wanted to share who SAS is and identify our mission statement. Student Accessibility Services exists to facilitate students equal access to university programs and services. It also promotes student learning and development and foster independence and self-advocacy, and also to provide leadership to the campus on disability issues. Going back to the first statement, students' equal access to university programs and services is conducted through our access coordinators as they approve accommodations for the academic setting. Promoting student learning and development, fostering independence and self-advocacy is done through our Student Accessibility Mentoring Services, also known as SAMs. And lastly, provide leadership to the campus on disability issues is by promoting awareness through professional development for faculty, staff, and even student organizations. We have 3 SAS podcasts covering different discussions to include feedback on transitioning from high school to college, an introduction of SAS services through the perspective of student workers, and lastly, an overview of assistive technology. We hope these podcasts bring value in understanding SAS services. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Georgie Goodlett, and I'm a Senior Access Coordinator here with Student Accessibility Services located at the Edinburgh campus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Cabanillas. I'm the Senior Interpreter here at the Edinburgh campus as well. So today's podcast is about transitioning from high school to college. We do have some questions that were mostly asked, and so we have prepared this for you. So, Georgie, what are some of the applicable laws covering students with disabilities in high school versus a college setting?
Great question, Maria. So for high school, some of the applicable laws include Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or what most people call IDEA, and then also Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Through the IDEA laws, students are often provided with a variety of supports, including intervention, related services, accommodations, and modifications. And these supports are meant to promote success. In the college setting, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then also Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Under the ADA, we are promoting equal access.
And so how do these laws impact policies and procedures within the two settings?
Okay, so with respect to these laws under IDEA and the high school setting, a lot of the responsibility falls on the school's shoulders. So the school will be responsible for identifying students with disabilities. They are actively seeking out, trying to find and support students with disabilities. The school is going to be responsible for the assessment and identifying the disabilities. School staff will discuss academic progress with the parents or legal guardians, and the school is responsible for developing an individualized education program, coordinating all of the supports, providing a free and appropriate education, and monitoring the student's progress. In the college setting, the student is retaining most of the responsibility. The student must come forward and self-identify or disclose his or her disability. The student must provide documentation of his or her disability to our office and is responsible for gaining that documentation. The student is considered the adult, and so all privacy and confidentiality will be protected. The student must request specific accommodations and provide supporting evidence through that documentation, and the student must act as an independent adult to activate and obtain these accommodations. In the college setting, the college must provide reasonable accommodations for the students who qualify. So you can see that in the high school setting, a lot of the burden is falling on the school, and in the college setting, a lot of the burden is falling on the student.
So now that you mentioned that, how does this impact the role of the parent?
Good question. In high school, the parent is the primary advocator for the student. So the parent must ensure that their child attends school. The parent is going to obtain periodic progress reports and updates regarding their student. The teachers are going to feel free to approach parents and the parent is the one that's going to be providing consent and advocating for their student. In the college setting, this role changes to the student. Parents are not required to send their students to college. No progress notes will be given to parents, and unless there is a release form on file giving permission that the parent be involved, all communication will go through the student. In the college, the student is considered his or her legal guardian unless there is a court order to the contrary. The student is expected to advocate on his or her own behalf. So again, in the high school setting, the parent plays the primary role, and in the college setting, this will transition to the student. So Maria, as we look at students who are wanting to apply for accommodations, does registering with our office require documentation? And if so, is this different in the high school versus the college setting?
Well, thank you for asking that. Yes, definitely. So during high school, the school will provide an individualized evaluation at no cost. Such documentation focuses on determining whether the student is eligible for services based on specific eligibility categories under IDEA or Section 504. Now, in college, students are responsible for obtaining the needed documentation at their own expense. So documentation should focus on specific nature of the condition or the disability, the functional limitations, and also demonstrate a need for specific accommodations. Now, we do have documentation guidelines. Our website has more information that applies to various disability categories. Something to keep in mind is that diagnosis written on prescription pads or parents' notes are not considered appropriate documentation. A history of accommodations without demonstration of current need also does not warrant provision of a similar accommodation. Also, documentation should be submitted on official letterhead of the professional, should be dated, signed, and include the name, title, and credentials of the evaluator if applicable. Lastly, documentation should not be older than 3 years, again, depending on the condition.
Is the disability-related documentation shared in any way?
It's good that you asked me that because disability-related information and also barriers experienced are not identified in the letter of accommodation nor on transcripts. The accommodation letters only identify the name of the student and also the approved accommodations. Faculty members can discuss with students regarding their accommodations, especially if the coordination is required. However, they cannot ask disability-related questions such as, why are you getting that accommodation? Or what is the reason behind it? Questions like those are not allowed to be asked. So, Georgie, what are some of the differences in course requirements and accommodations that the office offers?
That's a great question and something that a lot of students have concerns about. So in high school, a lot of that burden is turning to the teacher. Of course, class attendance is mandatory and it's monitored. The teachers are usually the ones who will reach out and approach students who are having difficulties. The teachers are going to remind students of assignment due dates. Teachers will also provide students with missed information when they are absent. And sometimes they work out extra credit opportunities or ways to make up tests. And the teacher may present information again so that the student can gain a better understanding. Once in college, that burden then rests on the student. Students are expected to follow the instructor's attendance policy. Students are responsible for asking the instructor for help. Students are responsible for keeping track of their projects, assignments, and test dates. And students must approach their instructor for information they missed when absent. Extra credit and makeup opportunities may not be an option, and instructors may not always follow the textbook and have lectures that simply enhance what is read. So again, we see that burden shifting from teachers to the student. With respect to accommodations, students who are in high school receive a lot of supports through the Individualized Education Program. As we mentioned before, this may include intervention, related services, accommodations, and modifications. Modifications are changes that impact the outcomes. They may substantially make things different for that student compared to the other students that are in the same class. Appropriate accommodations in the high school setting are determined by the student's IEP team. While in college, we look to provide reasonable accommodations to provide equal access and participation. The college is not required to lower or effect substantial modifications to the essential requirements, and the appropriate accommodations must be determined based on the most current documentation. So maybe an example of a reasonable accommodation might be extra time to complete a full examination. We want to ensure that despite the disability, the student can complete the exam and have equal access. An example of an unreasonable accommodation might be when a student is asked to complete every other problem on an exam. This is a modification and may provide an advantage and therefore is not deemed equal access. So, Maria, along with this, how do the expectations change as a student transitions from high school to the college setting?
Yes, definitely. So the college experience can be a challenge for all students, regardless if they have a disability or not. And that's because, they all can relate to the uncertainty felt in the transition from high school to a college setting. So all students, even students with disabilities, need to understand the expectations of their programs, the rigor involved, and also understand their learning style in processing information. Regarding grades and tests, I know you mentioned some of this. The IEP or the 504 plan may include modifications to the test formats or also grading, whereas in college setting, grading and test formats changes, such as getting a multiple choice test instead of an essay, are generally not available. The difference is how the test is given. So meaning we would provide you with the extended time with the proctoring of the exam, and those are all appropriate academic adjustments, again, with supporting documentation. In high school, many students get to do their exams again. They're called makeup exams. Those are often available. But in college, those are rarely an option. It really is up to the professor's discretion to offer those makeup exams. As far as student responsibilities in high school, tutoring services and study support may be a service provided by the IEP or the 504 plan, but in college, tutoring is not one of the accommodations provided. So students with disabilities must seek out these services, which are available to all enrolled students. Also, in high school, the teachers often take time to remind the students of assignments, due dates, but in higher ed, professors expect students to read, save, and refer back to the course syllabus to know what is expected and when the assignments are due. So again, it is very important for students to understand time management, course expectations, because it is vital for their success. Now, here at the Office of Student Accessibility Services, we can provide you support through the SAMS program, which stands for Student Accessibility Mentors. Contact our office and call us for more information. We'll more than gladly provide you with that.
So we hope this information has been useful to our listeners, and we hope you tune in for the next podcast, which will discuss an introduction to student accessibility services and give more insight into what kind of things the student may expect after they've been registered with our office and approved for accommodations.
Coming to you from Student Accessibility Services, it's Maria and Jordi.